Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We waited a couple minutes just to get people to trickle in, but I think we have a quorum, so let's jump in. We have a lot to go over. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Oops, let me turn on my video here. Say hi. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Elaine Chang. I'm the CEO of TaroWorks. I've been working with this tool for about 12 years now. And prior to this, I did a lot of work with data analytics. So that is my background, which is why I'm also very personally interested and excited about this topic today. So thanks for joining. Just to introduce the topic a little bit, at TaroWorks, we believe that data and information have the power to transform organizations, people, and their work. And so we have been helping nonprofits and social enterprises do that with our technology. So what we've seen over sort of the years that we've been doing this, next slide, please, is that there is sort of a data journey that people go on. And that is at the very beginning. Gabby, can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, is there a lag? Okay, thanks. Okay, so I wanted to kind of go over this data usage journey that we've seen over our years of working with organizations, and that is a lot of organizations just struggle with gathering data. So, oops. Okay, great, now. And then once you're able to just get information, the next struggle is how to get it in a timely and accurate manner. So getting information, we've talked to organizations that are getting data like 2 years after the fact. Unfortunately, that's not very helpful. So how can you get it in a timely and accurate manner? From there, are you taking that to report on and see the information in aggregate? And then finally, how are those reports and how is that data providing insights? So the insights could be used for anything from making data-driven decisions to gain funding. But I would also encourage you to think not only in terms of like what can headquarters do with the data, but how are field agents or other stakeholders empowered with data so that they can be more informed or have more robust discussions with the community members that they're talking to. And then ideally then people are using those insights to then drive improvements to make changes that are then being reported on. So that's that sort of arrow back. And so what we love to see is that data culture being created where those insights are driving change and are continuing to impact the organization and who they're ultimately serving. So today we're really excited to share the story of how Building Tomorrow has done this, how they've gone through the journey. So before I do an introduction of the guests, I wanted to launch a quick poll just to see where all of you are in that journey. So I believe it's open. You should be able to select those. So as I'm waiting for the answers to trickle in, I want to go over some housekeeping items. One is that this session is being recorded, and you can find this recording along with stories about other clients and other use cases, what they're doing in our TaroWorks YouTube channel. And then we'll also email out the recording afterwards so you can get a direct link. The other item is that everybody is muted by default. So if you do have a question, I encourage you to put that into the question box. Hopefully you see that, and Gabby in the background will be monitoring those. So don't wait till the end. If you have a question, put it in, and we'll get to it when we can. Okay, So let me stop this and share the results here. So it looks like kind of all over the board, which I sort of expected, but some of you are just gathering data. Some of you are in the phase of making sure it's timely and accurate. A lot of people are in reporting, and some are already gaining insights. Okay, great. So hopefully this will help all of you. Just hide this. Okay, so let's introduce today's guests. Let me just invite each person to unmute and say hello. Eric.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eric. I'm the Director of Innovation at Building Tomorrow. And my job is basically just to find ways to make Building Tomorrow better. So that includes making our programs more effective through understanding all of our data about our programming, and then also making our internal operations more efficient. So I work very closely with our monitoring, evaluation, our learning team.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for joining. And we have Michael Snow from Tableau.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike Snow. I'm part of the broader team at Salesforce supporting nonprofits' analytics needs through Tableau. If you weren't already aware, Salesforce is the parent company of Tableau. In my role, I have the opportunity to help nonprofits of all shapes and sizes that are providing real, tangible social impact all over the world. If I could summarize my role into a sentence, it would be that I help nonprofit organizations see, understand, and take action on their data. Really excited to be here. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, great. Just a quick lay of the land about the agenda for today. For the audience, we'll start by going over, well, Eric's going to be sharing about a few tools in their kind of data stack. And so Mike and I will provide a quick overview of those tools at the very beginning so that you're kind of aware of how they work once Eric starts talking about them. Then we'll dive into building tomorrow's journey for how they're using all of these tools live. And then Eric will show a demo of what they've built to showcase how they go from data in the field to getting those insights, and we'll end with Q&A. Okay, great. So let me start off with a quick overview of TaroWorks. Great. So TaroWorks, our parent company, is the Grameen Foundation. So we were kind of born out of a nonprofit as well. We saw that there was a need for connecting field agents, community workers with their headquarters. And so the vision for us is really to make it as easy to manage across the last mile as it is across the first mile. We focus on connecting the unconnected so that information can be included in decision making across the organization. And we want to help organizations like Building Tomorrow bridge that digital divide and get people using technology and using data who might not normally have access. As I mentioned before, in that data journey, we really focus on helping these organizations get that timely and accurate data that's shared, even despite challenges in the field like poor connectivity or having less tech-savvy mobile users. So how it works, next slide, is that there's really, so how it works is that there's two parts to the tool, which is there's an app that's native to Salesforce, and that's where the form building, job building is, and then using Salesforce's own reporting capabilities, that data can be kind of aggregated. So our backend is Salesforce, and that's where a lot of the administrators will build these field processes. On the front end, there's an Android app that's corresponding to the Salesforce part, and that's what the mobile users see. So mobile users in this case could be volunteers, fellows, community workers. If you're a social enterprise, it could be someone who is like selling life-changing goods, things like that. But that's really the offline interface with Salesforce data. and TaroWorks is in the middle with that sync engine. How it's used, we really see ourselves as an offline CRM tool. Next slide. We're trying to connect. It's not just headquarters getting information, but how do we empower field agents with data as well? So we try to push that historical information from Salesforce out so that organization or field agents can do case management, see personalized assignments, see access to historical information, update existing records. There's a guided interface so that to them it just sort of looks like, it seems like they're going through a paper form, which they might be more familiar with, but on the back end, all of the Salesforce mappings are happening. There's personal targets on the mobile app. There's access to resources, so videos, training guides offline, and we call it near real-time collaboration, but we can sync information back and forth into Salesforce as you have connectivity, but it's cached locally when you don't. And then finally, just how it's being used. There's a lot of different use cases, but across the 65 countries that we've been used in and the 14 million program participants and micro entrepreneurs, we've been used, sorry, Gabby, next slide. In sectors ranging from humanitarian programs, agriculture, clean energy, water sanitation. In this case, we'll be looking at sort of construction and education, kind of a mix of both for Building Tomorrow. And then for these organizations, they're using TaroWorks for anything from progress tracking, for example, monitoring and evaluations, to assessments, inventory management, maintenance, and support. Broad range of uses there. So that's just a little bit about TaroWorks. Mike, let me hand it over to you. What is Tableau? Please give us an overview.
Excellent, thanks, Elaine. Yeah, so Tableau, its mission is really, as I kind of shared earlier, is to help everyone see, understand, and act on their data, right? We want everyone at your organization to be able to utilize analytics. Go ahead to the next slide. So what is Tableau? Tableau at the highest level is a business intelligence platform. What it allows you to do is connect to any type of data you have, connect all of that data together, provides a visual canvas for you to be able to see and understand your data, so you can identify things like trends and patterns. It does this with all in a secure and trusted environment, so you can collaborate across teams, share information out, to the general public, etc. And most importantly, it allows you to make decisions based on your data, right? That's what we all came here to learn about. Like, how do we be better with our data? How do we make more data-driven decisions? Go to the next slide. So before I jump into here, I always like to show this slide, mostly because, to give props to our creative team for getting so much information onto one slide that's still legible. But if I could really have you focus really what's on the left here, right? So Tableau is an open and flexible platform. What I mean by that is Tableau bends to your processes. We don't tell you like you have to use this platform or you can only connect to this data, right? You can connect to any data you have. You can have use Tableau on our cloud. You can use it in your cloud if you want to do it on-prem, et cetera, et cetera. Data in general, right? You have to have trust and confidence in your data. Salesforce, Tableau, that is one of our pillars, is trust. So we want to make sure that all of our platforms that we share with organizations have that same layer of trust. It's vital to the success of Tableau. And it's also vital to the success of your platform and your organization. But really what Tableau is about is making all analytics experiences easy for everyone to use, right? So, it's not just your data scientists or your data engineers. It's enabling your business users, those in the field, making it easy so they can understand what's happening with the data that they're making decisions on. Let's go to the next slide. And finally, one thing I like to really share with everyone is Tableau is more than just the technology. It's also about our community. The Tableau data fam is part of the fabric that is the Tableau experience, offering support and collaboration among data visualization enthusiasts worldwide, millions of people across the globe. The community is there to help you whether you're a beginner or an expert, with knowledge sharing, tutorials, in-person and virtual events, and much, much more. The data fam not only enhances your individual skills, but it's also a collective that's driving the field forward, making it an invaluable asset for anyone looking to maximize the value of Tableau. With that, I think we're going to turn it over to Eric.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Absolutely.
Great, let's get into Building Tomorrow's story. So Eric, can you please share more about Building Tomorrow with the audience? What's your mission and vision?
Yeah, so you can see on the screen here that our mission is community-powered learning, and our vision is literacy and numeracy for all children. So we currently work exclusively in Uganda, which is in East Africa, where more than 83% of learners in 3rd grade lack foundational learning skills, such as being able to read and perform basic math. So we first sort of focused on building schools. That's how we have the name Building Tomorrow. But over time, we understood that an education is more than just the building that you're learning in. And so we have started to focus on serving very underserved areas of Uganda, where we go in and we create a team of people who support and champion education for primary school age children. And we call these our community education teams. And we create those teams by deploying recent graduates of Ugandan universities as fellows, who then enlist volunteers in the community who support education. And together they implement our programming. So they are working with school leadership in the community to build their capacities just to support their children's education. But they also make sure that the school is accessible and inclusive for all children. And then they also facilitate our core program, which is our Roots to Rise math and reading programs for children who have fallen behind.
Great, thanks. And then you mentioned Roots to Rise. Can you go into more detail about that? What are its goals?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, more than 83% of learners in 3rd grade, they can't read and they can't do basic math. So this is a real problem. And our Roots to Rise foundational learning program, the goal is to teach learners to read and do basic math if they're behind. So it's based on this concept called teaching at the right level. And this encourages teaching children according to their learning ability rather than their age or their grade level. So how this works is our program regularly assesses students' learning levels in both math and reading. And then it groups those students according to their learning level rather than what age they are or what class they're in. So you might have a child who is 8 years old learning alongside a child who is 12 or 13 years old. So we group those students together, and then we provide fun, interactive, and inclusive reading and math lessons for them. And then we assess them again and can regroup them several times over the course of what we call a camp, which is basically 40 hours of instruction for them. And since the beginning of 2022, we've reached over 350,000 learners via this Roots to Rise programming, and we've advanced 93% of learners at least one learning level in reading or math.
That's great. It does seem very heavy on the data, especially with these assessments. What kind of data does Roots to Rise look at or monitor?
So on the next slide, we have our key performance indicators for Roots to Rise. And those are, first, we just want to understand the number of learners enrolled in our programming. But then we also want to understand how they're performing in these camps. So we try to understand the rate of learners who are advancing at least one learning level. So there are different stages of learning. We've broken them down into these different levels. And so we try to understand how quickly we're advancing students through levels. And then we're also trying to understand how many students at the beginning and at the end of camp are able to meet certain proficiency standards that we expect out of them. So being able to read a paragraph or being able to perform all of the basic math functions of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But then also to add some context to these KPIs or these key performance indicators, we capture data on the learners themselves, so their gender, their age, their grade level, any disabilities they have. And then we also collect data about the Roots to Rise camp itself. So what setting it took place in school or in a community setting, who facilitated it, whether that was a man or a woman or a teacher or one of our volunteers, and how many volunteers we had supporting it. So in that way, we're able to understand and break down, what types of students and what types of camps are performing well.
That's great. It does seem like there's a lot of different people involved just to get to this this point where you can report on this. Let's dig into the operations behind this data a little bit. How does Building Tomorrow's operations work, and who are the different stakeholders who are using this data?
So here you can see our model, and it's built on this idea of a community education team. So a team it includes our Building Tomorrow fellows, who are Building Tomorrow staff. They're recent graduates of Ugandan universities, and they provide direct support from Building Tomorrow to the community. And they work to then recruit and build the capacity of community education volunteers, our CEVs, as you can see on the model here. And our volunteers are members of the community. They're very passionate about supporting education, and they help our fellows implement our programming. Together, these teams, along with other community members, they implement our Roots to Rise programming. They enroll out of school children. They build teacher and school leadership capacity, and really try to get kids back into school and learning. In June, then we're going to deploy a system strengthening approach where we're working with government to deploy our programming, and we're really excited about that. But we currently have 200 fellows in the fields, and they've recruited over 13,000 CEVs in the life of this model over the last several years. And so they're really the ones who are collecting our data. We also have 34 office staff in Kampala, the capital of Uganda, and then 8 in the US who are just supporting our operations. So the people who consume data or use the data, so our CEVs are collecting data on our learners in Roots to Rise. They're actually assessing the students, and then they're working with the fellows who use TaroWorks to record it and sync it into our Salesforce database. And then from there, our team is able to utilize that data. So our fellows are able to see all of that data and sort of understand what's going on in the communities that they're supporting. But then our monitoring, evaluation, and learning team and our programs team are also able to utilize that data. So we perform analysis, we try to understand sort of how different students are performing in camps and whatnot, and use that to make adjustments to our programming. And then our programs and our leadership team also use it to communicate results to our stakeholders to get their buy-in into our programming. And finally, our development team also uses it to sell Building Tomorrow to funders and to potential partners. And so basically demonstrating how we're effectively using their funding and technical assistance. So everybody at Building Tomorrow kind of touches data in some way.
Yeah, that's great and super inspiring. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I know you didn't come to this overnight, so let's share how you got there with the audience, because it seems like there are also different parts of this journey. So maybe let's start at the beginning, at least for data. So prior to using Salesforce, how were you handling data and analysis, and what did you need to do that you weren't able to do?
So I'm sure this may resonate with a lot of people on this call, but we used to collect data using paper forms and then transcribing that into Excel sheets. And then those Excel sheets were kind of compiled all together from each fellow into one mega sheet by the MEL team. And it was a mess. It was very cumbersome to compile all of that and keep things in order. It's very prone to errors. And it took a long time to even get the data. to be able to sift through it. What you see on your screen right here is a very cleaned up version in Excel. It used to be a lot messier than that, but even this was tough to work with. The data wasn't very centralized or accessible to people. It wasn't easily shared, and it was difficult and sort of inflexible to analyze. I mentioned we reached 350,000 learners over the last couple of years, and I just can't imagine trying to track all of those learners using the methods that we were using just a few short years ago. So RootsRise actually started in 2019. We launched with 13,000 learners and sort of used this method of collecting data on the system, but it was just so cumbersome and such a difficult, inefficient process that we recognized we just really need to make a change. We need to make data more accessible and just easier to share and sort of dig into and derive some insights from.
Great. And then why did you choose Salesforce and TaroWorks?
We'd actually already been using Salesforce for donor and fundraising data, so we were already familiar with that system and we liked it. We really liked how centralized and accessible how data could be on the Salesforce platform, and we really liked how it could deliver data as close to real time as possible. So we wanted to sort of stick with Salesforce, and so then TaroWorks stood out to us because it's native to Salesforce. It's right onto the system very easily. We're able to set up everything within our Salesforce environment. But then TaroWorks also works offline, which was necessary for us because the communities that we support are very rural, very underserved areas of Uganda. Our fellows are not always, they don't always have a network connection or internet to be able to collect data. So being able to collect data offline was a key. And then TaroWorks stood out because it seemed very user-friendly in actually building data collection forms. And it allowed us to build data forms that were user-friendly. So being able to build forms that were able to prevent errors, sort of guide folks through the data collection process, especially folks who don't normally interact with data. So that's what really stood out to us with TaroWorks and Salesforce.
That's great. I love to hear that. Okay, and then so now let's skip to now you're using Salesforce and TaroWorks. So what kind of data have the fellows been able to input with TaroWorks, and how are you using Salesforce then to aggregate and report on this information?
All of those key performance indicators that I mentioned earlier, those we're able to collect data on those using TaroWorks and Salesforce, using our volunteers and our fellows. So that includes the rate of learners advancing certain learning levels, the proportion of students who can read and do math, the number of learners that we've enrolled in Roots to Rise. But then all of that contextual data, like I said, we know who our learners are, their gender, their age, their grade level, and all of the details about the camp. So all that information we collect using TaroWorks. And what happens is our facilitator of the Roots Rise camp, the person who's teaching the students, they record all of this data on a sort of a paper form, a register. And then the fellow works with them to transcribe that data into TaroWorks on a tablet that we provide them. And then they're able to sync that data from TaroWorks into Salesforce, where then it's used by all of our folks at Building Tomorrow.
This looks great.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is an example of a dashboard that we have in Salesforce that shows sort of where we're at with certain metrics. So you can see our enrollment number in Roots Rise in there, and our children with disabilities. And this is, I refreshed this, I think earlier today.
Yeah, great. That near real-time data. Okay, so I think, for a lot of people, this is sort of like a holy grail. This is great information. Why did you feel like you needed more? Why did you start using Tableau?
Well, the reporting in Salesforce can be kind of basic at times, and it's hard to get really deep insights about our data. So Salesforce is very good at sharing sort of operational data. So just like simpler data about what we're doing and like what's going on. But with Tableau, what we wanted to do was get more strategic, more sort of actionable insights on what's happening in our programs, information that we could actually use to make adjustments to our programs. And Tableau really stood out to us as the sort of analytics tool to be able to do that. And then on top of it, I think it's just a little bit easier to make things look nice and meet or match our brand in Tableau to be able to share with folks externally. So we started using Tableau in 2022.
Great. And how would you say this next level of like insights, how has that enhanced Building Tomorrow and your kind of data consumption throughout the organization? Or have you made any changes using this information? Yeah, what has this helped you achieve?
Number one, with the dashboard that you see here, it's really helped us communicate better what's happening with our program. So this is a public-facing dashboard that we share with various funders and stakeholders. It's allowed us to just be a little bit more efficient also in understanding our own programming instead of the MEL team, the monitoring and evaluation team, just getting requested all the time of what's this data point or that data point. Folks are able to access internally this dashboard. And so it's helped make us more efficient there. But then on the next slide is a good example of how we've been able to actually use this platform, Tableau, to make adjustments to our programming. So at the end of last year, we found that our grade 4 and our grade 5 learners, that sort of light orange and green on the right side of the graph, we saw that they were not really reaching the learning level, that level 4 that we would expect of them. And what we found within Tableau was that the first bar in each of the color is what level they're starting at, our students at baseline. And we found that really they were starting, our 4 and 5, P4 and P5 grade students were starting at about the same level as a P1, 2, and 3 student. But they had farther to go. We expected more out of our grade 4 and grade 5 students. But they also had then farther to go. And so we were able to use this insight to make adjustments to our programming this year, to our curriculum, to hopefully accelerate our grade 4 and grade 5 learners to be able to meet them where they're at that lower level, but then get them farther to where they need to go to that level 4 learning to be able to feel proficient at being able to read and do math. So in general, it's just allowed us to get very deep insights into our programming and then use those to make adjustments to our curriculum or who we're reaching or whatnot.
Yeah, I think this is a great example because then if you're making these changes, you can sort of use this data, use these graphics to share then with the fellows and the volunteers for kind of the reason why you're making these changes. I guess that takes me to my next question, which is around how has this use of data throughout Building Tomorrow changed over time, and how has that changed how people view data? Oops, did I lose you? Eric, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute, taking a drink of water. So yeah, our interacting with data used to be very siloed to certain people in the organization. So basically IT and our tech experts. We did not even have a monitoring, evaluation, and learning team 5 years ago. And really it was siloed to those tech experts because the tools were technology. And so those people know technology, so they're going to be the ones working with data. And really other people, our programs team, our operations teams, were not interacting with data, didn't want to touch it. They would basically work with our fellows to collect it, and it would get shipped off to the person using the tools, and then it would never be used again. So we really made a concerted effort to change the culture at Building Tomorrow in regards to data. We wanted to be a more data-driven organization. So our first step was just to create this playbook, part of which you see on the screen here, for our monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So it was basically, this is just an ethos of how we wanted to approach monitoring, evaluation, and learning at Building Tomorrow, and not just as a team, but involve everybody in the organization. So we use this to kind of guide all of our actions and built a monitoring and evaluation team based on this and based on being able to collaborate with other folks. So this was really helpful for us in sort of understanding how we want to approach building a data-driven organization. And so once we started to build this culture, we went through a period of a lot of requests for data. It was almost overwhelming for our team. We were just getting asked for data points and whatnot, but we recognized that as a sign of success for us, that the culture was changing and we didn't really want to shoot people down. And so we really kind of leaned on this idea of parsimony, this pillar that we want to use sort of the least amount of data points as possible and be very efficient. Use the least amount of data points as possible to explain as much as we can about our programming. So finding that balance and leaning on that and leaning on this playbook as a whole was really helpful for us. And so I feel like we've really solidified our ability to quickly report on what is happening with our programming. And we've now started to dive more into, especially with Tableau, understanding why those things are happening and how we then can make adjustments to our programs to create better outcomes for learners. And so that's sort of our next part of this journey that we're still currently in is sort of the why. Why are things happening? How can we make them better?
That's great. I am very encouraged to hear that, you know, when people start asking for data, that means they're curious, they're thinking about things in a more data-driven way. So I think that is very exciting. It might mean a lot of work in the short term to try to answer them, but it is kind of the start of, you know, really consuming that data, which is exciting. Okay, great. Let me pause here. I think the next thing Eric was going to do was kind of showcase an actual example of how this all works with the systems. So as Gabby is kind of shifting that presenter over to Eric, I just wanted to give a quick reminder that if you have any questions, please put them into the question box, and Gabby will be monitoring those. Also, if you have just like a quick, you know, clarification question, feel free to add those in, and we can interject and clarify as well. Okay, so I think at this point, Eric, you should be the presenter.
Yep, I'm ready to start when you are.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think we want to see a demo of how this whole tech stack works. So yeah, take it away.
Okay, so this is the TaroWorks mobile app. This is loaded onto all of our fellows' devices to be able to collect data in the field. How they go to collect data is first, like I said, they work with our volunteers to record data on a paper form, but then they come in here to record that data to transcribe it into this TaroWorks app. So I'm going to show you how they record learner assessments. So all of our jobs here are different ways in which we can record data. So I'm going to find our job that allows us to record assessments about our Roots to Rise learners and start a new job and go into this job. So the great thing about TaroWorks is that it syncs data back and forth with Salesforce. So we can not only send data to Salesforce, but we can pull data from Salesforce, which makes it really easy to be able to sort of integrate with data that's already existing in there. And so we're able to sort of narrow the focus for fellows on what sort of data they're working with. So they're able to kind of look at our umbrella camp and then find their specific Roots to Rise camp in here, where then they have their specific students that they have enrolled. And so this allows us to really kind of, again, guide the fellow through the data collection process. So we have Mike and myself in here that we're going to record some assessments for. So we just like to understand, we record our literacy and our numeracy assessments at the same time. So we'll just assume this was an end line, the end of a camp, and we say ended today, and we assess the student today. And then maybe we did our numeracy end line assessment. Maybe we did it yesterday. We assessed all the learners in our camp. So just simply answering the questions and continuing, you kind of guided through the form. And then here we're able to mark what learning level myself and Mike were at. And so for myself, we'll just mark a couple learning levels for me. Maybe I was level 1 in math, and then I can hit the next button and see, okay, now I'm going to record for Mike. And then we'll mark what level Mike tested at. We'll let him graduate in math. Seems like since he works for Tableau, he's probably good at math. And then yeah, that's it. It's as simple as that, collecting data on this form. Our fellow can then mark it as complete, and then they can decide whether they want to sync it now to Salesforce, or maybe they're offline in the field. Maybe they need to get back to their home first, where they have an internet connection, they can sync it later. I'm going to sync it now, and we can go into Salesforce. So in Salesforce, I have a profile on my student here. Like I said, we have all of that demographic information about me as a student, my age, my gender, and class level, and whatnot. But once I refresh here, we'll be able to see my assessment pop up. So it's as quick as that. TaroWorks. I know I have a faster internet connection than some of our fellows in Uganda, but it's pretty quick getting it into Salesforce, so we can see those assessments that I just conducted for myself. They're both N-line stages, and our numeracy level was 1, literacy level was 2. So we're able to get all that data into Salesforce and then work with that data. There's some really good reporting features in Salesforce to sort of aggregate this data. So this report is showing who's enrolled in Roots to Rise, broken down by the different districts in Uganda. So you can see that we've enrolled a lot of different learners, 117 unique learners already this year in Roots to Rise. We're able to then take all these individual reports that we put together and centralize them into a singular dashboard to give us a full picture of our programming. And so on here, we see our out-of-school children that we've enrolled, and by class and by gender, and we're able to break things down easily. We're able then to see the number of CEVs that we've recruited this year alone and how many hours they've volunteered. And then all of our Roots to Rise numbers that I just alluded to. So Salesforce is pretty good at just kind of showing what is happening, all that operational data, as I mentioned earlier, of understanding, okay, what's going on with our program. But Tableau then is really helpful in helping us to understand why certain things are happening. I guess first I'll start with our programs dashboard here that we share externally. We're able to sort of recreate what we have in Salesforce in Tableau to share for an external audience and sort of match our branding. But the real power is being able to dive into some insights about our programming. The first thing you do with Tableau is to connect to a data source. So in order to get all of these dashboards looking nice, you first need to have data in here. And Tableau is really great about offering a lot of different data sources. So we are able to connect directly to Salesforce, which is really nice. We're able to sort of set up our data architecture in Tableau because we have a lot of different data that we collect about our schools and our fellows and our students and all of their camp assignments and assessments. But Salesforce isn't the only data source that you can use. So you can connect to a lot of different data sources. You can have data in Excel to bring into Tableau and PDF files and whatnot. You can also connect to other online databases. There's a ton of different data sources that you can use in Tableau. One of my favorite actually is a spatial file where we can actually map all of our programming onto the different districts in Uganda to see where we are focused on specifically. So again, once we map all of that, we grab all that data from our source, we're able to then create these different graphs and visualizations of our data, but then also share some static content. We'd always like to share a story about our programming along with all the data to sort of give some insight around or give some qualitative information around all of this quantitative information. But again, other than just sort of reporting on data, we're able to really understand the why behind our programming. So this was that graph that I showed earlier on the presentation of looking at the different levels of where students started versus where they finished. There's 4 levels, so we can see sort of the average level that they're starting at versus the average level that they're finishing at. And then where we can add some extra notation in here of where we can expect to see them finishing at. And so here it's very easy to visualize where we're falling short and where we are succeeding. But then there's just a lot of different tools that you can use in Tableau to be able to dive in and out of the data, derive some very useful insights to be able to make adjustments to our programming. So that's a little bit about how we use all three of those tools in tandem.
This is great. I love the visuals, and I think this really just pulls everything together. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let me just invite Mike to see if you have any sort of insights to share on that Tableau piece and how Eric and Building Tomorrow are using this.
Thanks, Elaine, and thanks, Eric, for that presentation. That was fantastic. I think before just pointing anything out, I did have just a couple additional questions for Eric. I'm just curious if you could share with everyone attending, what was it like to learn Tableau? I mean, we're looking at the screen right now. I'm seeing a lot of things. Talk through us, like, how did you learn Tableau? I mean, did you go to school for this?
So I have no background in monitoring and evaluation at all. I went to business school, and so I guess first for sort of building that data culture in general, you don't need a background in this stuff. You can make it happen. It can be done. But with Tableau specifically, same sort of thing. I think you just have to be willing to learn and to just trial and error a lot. So I actually first sort of learned it just through that, by kind of trial and error and using Google, and Tableau has a really good forum where people can ask questions and get answers. So that was really helpful in getting me to learn it. But then I sort of got to a point where, like, okay, I need to really establish the fundamentals. And so Tableau also offers really good e-learning tools that eventually I just took a course on the Tableau basics, the fundamentals, I think is what it's called. And that really helped solidify then the learning. And so when we started rolling this tool out to other members of our team, we had them start there with the Tableau e-learning, which was really straightforward and really helpful in getting people to learn. And so there's a couple different paths. If you're somebody who really likes to just kind of dive in and try things out, you can do it that way. If you like to have a course that walks you through it, you can do it that way as well.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And I'll add one additional piece to that. I mentioned the Tableau community before. We also have, a great network of certified Tableau consultants we call partners internally that can help with this work as well. So if you have a big project, you're not able to, spend the time learning the tool effectively to create it, we can lean on them as another option to help, with Tableau itself. Eric, you mentioned a little bit about kind of how you rolled this out. I think one of the things that I'm sure a lot of organizations deal with is just change management, right? Like, hey, here's a new tool. How do we get people using it? How do we find it? Are they going to find it effective? I think it'd be helpful if I know you shared a little bit, but maybe just kind of restate, like, how was this so successful at your organization as you kind of got started? Like, how did you roll it out? Maybe just restate that. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, so it was really helpful to first sort of get leadership on board. That really was helpful in building that culture and getting people interested in using data. And so that really helped people get interested in using Tableau and learning Tableau, how to use data to make adjustments to our programming. So that was a key for us. I think another key point is to just make sure that the technology is useful. Not everything has to be fulfilled using technology. Like I said, we still use paper forms. We still occasionally do some analysis via Excel, but we utilize TaroWorks, Salesforce, and Tableau strategically. And so I think that makes it easier for folks when they're using these things, that it's useful for them. And Tableau especially has been useful for us in being able to show our programs team that really you can gather some really deep insights from it and really make informed adjustments to their programs to help students learn more. Give a lot of thought to training design, I think is also really helpful. So we really like to think through sort of our training curriculum in general and sort of piece it together more so than just looking at just a singular session or whatever, but sort of how can we build that knowledge throughout or over time and throughout the year and build on it, because it's not going to come quickly. But I think if you can encourage questions and suggestions from people and really, again, accept their enthusiasm about it in the form of questions and suggestions, and that will really get them interested in using these things. Yeah, I kind of said earlier, I think it can be daunting, especially for those who answered the poll earlier about they're just at the gathering data stage or they're at the reporting stage. It might seem like it's a long path getting from there to using Tableau, but it can be done. It can be done by folks like me who don't have any background in monitoring and evaluation, but now we're able to use these tools to make really informed decisions about our programming. I think especially with Tableau, it was sort of the excitement. We were farther along in our culture shift there, but people really started getting excited about Tableau when we were able to show off how they were able to use it to make adjustments to their programming and how they were able to be more informed in their day-to-day. So I think, again, kind of falling back to making sure that the data and the technology is useful is really important for people, because if it's not useful for them, then they're not going to use it. And we have found that all three of these tools, TaroWorks, Salesforce, and Tableau, have all been extremely useful for us.
Excellent. That was great. I think, just to, just restate like that point, which is so important, and within that is, it's really important to have a plan, right? It's really important that the team is involved so that you can go from, the start to the end. Because analytics, many different things at your organization, it's not a one-party sport, right? It's a team thing. So I think, just as a reflection of how you guys are utilizing analytics at your organization and the tools, like, great job. Like, you've obviously got a plan, and you're getting the insights, right? That's the point of doing this, is getting the insights out of the data that you have so you can make decisions to drive impact further. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, just to kind of hammer home early, like, we did not have a plan 5 years ago. It's never too late to make a plan, though, and you can make it, and you can go from where we were at with using Excel and email nightmare of trying to understand our programs to being able to just click through a couple graphs on Tableau to really understand what's happening, why students aren't learning maybe. And so, yeah, again, it can be done. It takes some work, but it definitely can be done step by step, like we have.
I think that's a really good point about kind of doing it step by step. I think part of the dauntingness is people wanting to have a full system ready to go for everything. But kind of what you've done, your journey really highlights how iterative you are as well. It's like, okay, let's perfect this. Let's take the learnings and build on top of that. Maybe if one group is using it, we'll start there and let's get other stakeholders on board too. So it really highlights how you're using the iterative approach both in adoption, but also using the data to improve your programs too. So I think it's a really great way of rolling out so that fulfills exactly what you need at that moment.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, it wasn't perfect when we started. It's still not perfect. We still make mistakes, but I think the key is learning from those missteps. Monitoring, evaluation, and learning is the name of our team, and learning is not just about all of the data on our programs, but it's about learning about our processes as well and how we can make things better, and being okay with messing up, seeing it as a learning lesson.
Great. I want to do a final call out for any questions there are, but yeah, maybe. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Mike or Eric directly, or with TaroWorks, we're at hello@taroworks.org. Maybe at this point, since we have just a few minutes, any kind of final thoughts, Eric or Mike, that you wanted to impart on the audience?
Just really quickly, I would say, from an analytics perspective, analytics can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But if you break it down into kind of its core purpose, it's to ask and answer questions with your data. So if you think about it that way, it becomes a lot less daunting. And, kind of just to piggyback on what Eric shared earlier, like, it's never too late to start. It's always just start utilizing your data and asking those questions, and you'll start getting that feedback loop that'll drive more data decision-driven, culture at your organization. That'd be it for me.
That's great.
Yeah, I think you just kind of pair that culture with a good culture with good tools, and that's what we've tried to do here. We've really, I don't think you can really have one without the other. So we've really focused on building that culture at Building Tomorrow to use data and be curious about it. But then we also have some really great tools that we use. TaroWorks has been great for us to be able to collect data. Salesforce has been great to be able to just sort of understand what's happening, and Tableau has been really great in helping us understand why it's happening. So being able to combine those two things, the culture and the tools, has been just great for us.
Great. We're just at time. So Eric, I want to thank you so much for sharing your journey and what you're doing. We love your work and we're so happy to be part of it. So yeah, thanks for sharing this, and I'm sure this will be inspiring to some people out there. So yeah, just keep up the great work. And then Mike, thank you for sharing more about Tableau. Excited to see, yeah, what other organizations you are taking further in their data journey. So thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to those who presented. Till next time.